Good evening. My name is Diarmuid O'Kyle. I'm outside the City Hall here in Cork with the Housing Action Group. It's 10 past 10 in the evening. We've been here for the last 12 hours and we're going to be here till 10 o'clock tomorrow. And I'd just like to explain why we're here. We're the Housing Action Group, so that's probably self-explanatory. We're here because of the utter neglect that our state and our councils and everybody else involved in the provision of social and housing services, that utter neglect that they've shown to the needs of families and people who are homeless, who are sleeping rough, who are unable to afford to rent, who are suffering rack rents, who are suffering atrocious conditions in their housing, where minimum standards are a fiction. They're more or less, even though it's a state law, it's like an aspiration. I know we have a situation here in Cork that in the private rental sector, approximately 97% of private rental accommodation is below the legal minimum standard. That's a test carried out specifically by Cork County Council, but I know the same ratios apply in the city area, and actually roughly the same ratio applies up and down the country. So why do we have a law that says rented accommodation should be of a minimum standard when nothing happens to try to address or enforce that standard? Now, when you talk about the standards in housing, there is a law there, and you ask, well, who's enforcing it? Well, it is the job of the local authority. Local councils are the body who are supposed to ensure compliance with minimum standards. But anybody who can inquire with their own local authority, or look in the case here in Cork, and you'll find there is less than 2 or 3 cases taken against rogue landlords to try to enforce anything near minimum standard compliance. So it's an area utterly neglected by councils. The big area, of course, neglected by councils is the provision of social housing. It's like as if since the 50s, 60s and 70s, councils have simply given up building and construction. In fact, there used to be large direct labour forces employed in all the councils. This now is no more than a handful of direct labour that's left. So construction that is carried out is usually done on a subcontract basis. So this has meant that there is no direct housing anymore, even though City Council here in Cork, County Council, and I'm sure it's probably the same up and down Ireland, have huge tracts of publicly owned land that is quite usable for public housing, yet it's not done. That's a massive neglect. The other neglect is at the hand of government, and I would say there's also culpability at local level too, is this whole rent controls, the whole area of it. It's out of hand. Rents are higher now than I think they've ever been in the history of the state, and people simply can't afford to rent, or where they do, their entire disposable income is taken there, and families are living, or individuals are living in fear of a phone call from the landlord to say, sorry, look, we need to renovate, we need to take it over, you have to vacate your tenancy, we're serving notice on you, because really what they need is to increase rents further. So that is happening in increasing numbers of people. You also have the phenomenon these days in another input to the homeless area is through banks and the vulture funds. So 2 weeks ago we had Permanent TSB Bank hand over 6,000 more family mortgages, home loans, to a vulture fund. Now think of this, because Permanent TSB is a bank wholly owned by the people of Ireland, by our state. In fact, it only exists because billions of euro of our money was put in to rescue this bank. So this kind of handing over of huge tracts of mortgages has happened repeatedly with all of the major banks, including AIB and other state-owned banks. So why are we handing over all these when government is spending huge amounts of money subsidising emergency accommodation, subsidising rental supports with HAP and what have you, and they're not building housing? Why are they giving away thousands of homes already built and driving people into homelessness that then the state will have to pick up the tab for? It makes no logic whatever. And I suppose the protest here tonight is trying to highlight, why are these things happening? Why are families left Why are young couples not able to have marriages? Why aren't they able to start new families, which would be the natural thing for people to do at a certain stage of their lives? And the reason is utter neglect and corruption in government, local and national, because they are simply not carrying out policy in accordance with the interests of the people. It would seem, and I think it's a commonly held view these days, that there is an ideological shackle on government which says private is good, public is bad. So for the last 20 years or so, government has gone through a process of privatising everything they possibly can. In local councils, refuse has been privatised. They've tried to privatise water, that's an ongoing struggle. Direct labour, maintenance services, even house maintenance of public owned houses is generally subcontracted out to the private sector. So in the construction and provision of housing, this has meant that all the government programmes are geared towards trying to entice private developers to build, thinking that this is the only way to get it done and the ideologically correct way to get it done, that public enterprise doesn't work, blah 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 blah, even though the history of councils building social housing has been 100% successful. We have huge estates all over Ireland, in Cork as well, where public housing was used and have worked for decades. So why this programme has been dropped for a scheme that doesn't work is beyond belief. So we're here tonight protesting. It's our 11th time doing a 24-hour protest of this nature. Interestingly enough, in 12 hours, not one official of Cork City Council has come out to even greet us or ask us why are we here. Not one member of Cork City Council, with all their proclamations about standing for people, not one single one of them has come here today to express solidarity in any way, shape or form. We're left speaking with many decent people who have come to us here today, who've offered support and expressed interest in joining in with the work that we're doing. So that's where we're going to continue. So maybe I'll invite one or two of the lads here who want to say something, because we have a specific plan, but more about that in a second. Tony, would you want to say something here to the people? Tony will try to explain why he's here and maybe point out some home truths.
Hi, I'm Tony Walsh and I'm chairman of the Cork Action Housing Group. Where do you start?
What's the condition of housing in the city, Tony?
Absolutely deplorable. What with the black mould and the whole lot, and paint's peeling off walls. A lot of the stock is, not fit for human habitation. And just looking across the way here, across the forecourt, we're looking at this big red sign that costs 300,000.
We'll try and see, can we show them that? One sec now. There's the We Are Cork logo. 300,000 euros worth of development. We can't zoom into that, no. We have only a simple camera here. Anyway, sorry Tony. That was an investment recently by Cork City Council, without
any consultation.
Correct. Yeah.
Now we're having a new bridge built, a few hundred metres up the road. There's absolutely no need for it. They're up and down 100 yards either side. There are already existing bridges.
That bridge is cut to cost €5 million, I believe.
€5 million.
Yeah, again, public money.
Yeah. And when people go and try and point it out to the city council, they get arrested. As happened to myself and a number of my colleagues a couple of weeks ago when we went in to try and explain to the city council, that we were dissatisfied with the way they're treating the people of Cork. Closing down our main street in the middle of the day, busiest time for businesses and the whole lot in the town. The town is almost dead because of city council, because they are incompetent and corrupt. Thank you.
Good man, Tony. Yeah. I'd say Tony's summing up there was fairly accurate. I have to say the councils throughout Ireland are demonstrably corrupt. In fact, just the other day, being a member of Cork County Council, I had the experience of the executive and the party whips conniving together to actually push through a programme where they're going to set up, they've decided now to set up a joint company between the finance arm of the NTMA, the National Treasury Management Agency, who manage the state's pension reserve fund, 8.9 billion or something is the fund they have, and Cork County Council, to actually provide housing development throughout the state, throughout the 26 counties. But the housing development they want to do is they want to provide the basic infrastructural groundwork. That is, they'll bring the roadways, water services, sewage, electrical, transport connections and so on to private land, so that developers may come in afterwards and construct housing in the hope that they'll get some refunds then down the line from the developers. So they're going to invest, in the first instance, up to €25 million in a scheme to do this. And that, of course, is described by our media today as investment in public housing. It has nothing whatever to do with public housing. It is all to do with supporting private developers. Now, how this was handled in the council was interesting, because the council, it was our first time hearing a solid proposal from the executive that they wanted to form this company. And members of council across all the parties quite rightly were concerned that, well, what do we know about this? What are the rules? Who's going to report to who? What kind of developments will happen, etc.? And there were no answers. So what happened in typical style is the party whips decided we should adjourn the meeting and suspend it, and let the party whips and senior party hacks go into direct talks with the executive, behind closed doors, may I add, like out of everybody else's earshot, and decide could they work this out. So they did that. A half an hour later they come back into the council chamber, and in less than 10 seconds, I would say, before they even knew that they had restarted the meeting, they had said, bang, approved, we're setting up this company, next business please. So this was political parties in action. They had obviously reached some agreement with the executive. I don't know what it is, even though I'm a member of the council. This is what's happening day in, day out. Political parties are manipulating the policy in council as if it was their private affairs. But, as I said to them, there's a huge housing list in Cork. People are crying out for housing. Why is Cork County Council allowing its planning department, engineering, architects and executive to be engaged in projects for private developers up and down the entire state? They should focus their work where the ratepayers are paying the money, where taxpayers' money is being invested in providing services for the people of Cork. That's what they should be doing, but here we go. This is party manipulation. Now, our protest is ongoing, and we've been, as I said, this is our 11th 24-hour event this year so far, and we're going to continue highlighting these scandals. But we're taking it a step further. We have in the process the formation of a new thing, a new special purpose vehicle, for want of a better word. We're going to establish a thing called the Housing Rights and Reform Alliance. Housing rights in its full aspect, dealing with the provision of public housing, dealing with rental hikes that are going on. The council's legal department, for example, should pursue rogue landlords who are breaking the legislation in this area. We need to focus on the conditions of maintenance in housing, public and private. We need to deal with the homeless issue. We need to end rough sleeping. We need to bring people who are at that extreme end of the housing crisis, bring them in, rebuild their lives, provide the services required for that, rather than cast them to one side, have them jumping in rivers, dragging them out, letting them out again 2 days later, just to repeat that action. And that is happening several times a week in Cork into the River Lee here. This is an absolute shocking disgrace that's going on, and nothing being done about it. Of course, the other big scandal in the housing arena is we have families, some of those included being kicked out by vulture funds and other rogue landlords who simply want to maximise their profit. We have people in what's called emergency accommodation in B&Bs and hotels. And I know there's an example of a family who was with us earlier today, and the state, our public money, is paying €1,900 every week. €1,900 every week to pay for emergency accommodation, and they're told to expect that to carry on indefinitely. Now, who's making money out of this? I will say with absolutely no doubt, there's people making a lot of money out of homelessness. It is a business. Landlords are making money, consultancies, including charities, are making money out of this crisis. So we're forming this housing alliance, but it's also, we have this reform part of it, and that is we want to reform local government and end the corruption, end the waste of public money, end the waste of ratepayers' money, and stop, in Cork's case, stop the utter vandalisation of Cork that is being pursued by the Office of Public Works and Cork City Council, who have this crazy flood defence system which will make the central core of Cork into a building site for a 10-year period, which, if businesses aren't already collapsed, this will just finish them off. So anyway, we're on our protest. We'll be here till morning. We invite people to join with it. We invite and encourage people up and down the country to take direct action. Go on the streets.
Like the French do.
Look at what the French done. The Yellow Jackets. Come on, Jimmy. The Yellow Jackets in France. The straw that broke the camel's back might have been that fuel tax, but they are up to they've had enough of nonsense from government. Wage cuts, real wage cuts, poverty, homelessness, right across the board, and the utter arrogance of European leaders towards the conditions of people. So we take great courage. They've copied our yellow vest trend, I think so, expressing solidarity with us, so we'll return that to them. Vive la France, and long live Ireland, Éireann go bragh. Thank you.